They mocked us the moment they saw us. Not with caution, not with interest, mockery. To the galactic elite, we were the anomaly no one feared. Primitive, soft-bodied bipeds with an unhealthy dependency on atmosphere, emotion, and imagination. They called our planet quaint. Our art? Childish. Our technology? Scrap metal engineered by fire starters. It wasn't hatred. Hatred would have implied threat. It was worse, dismissal. Their media ran cartoons of Earth as a zoo. Analysts placed us below economic relevance. And their military forecasts? Barely a paragraph. Unlikely to participate in galactic conflicts. No threat projection. No hyperlane reach. They considered us a harmless oddity spinning around an insignificant star. When the Galactic Council officially recognized Earth, it wasn't an invitation, it was a containment gesture. A bureaucratic leash to keep us visible and boxed. Treaties were extended, all one-sided. We were offered protectorate status, politely phrased colonization. They dressed the insult in diplomatic courtesy, called it technological stewardship. Their diplomats smiled. We smiled back. They never noticed we didn't sign a thing. In truth, we watched. That was our first move, not to react, but to listen. Every condescending speech, every intercepted transmission, every internal debate where our extinction was floated as a strategic option, we recorded it all. They didn't hide it. They assumed we couldn't decode their languages, that we hadn't pierced their encryption. But we had. Quietly, relentlessly, we built understanding. Every planetary broadcast, every military directive, every casual insult that dripped from their lips, we archived it, studied it, remembered. They thought we were still marveling at their starships, their artificial moons, their cities floating in orbit. In reality, we'd already dissected half of it. We saw the flaws in their shield harmonics. We mapped their power relays and latency zones. Our satellites didn't orbit for weather, they shadowed passing ships and mimicked their signatures. What they mistook for agricultural satellites were prototype scramblers cloaked in silence. When their fleets performed training exercises near our space, we said nothing. When one of their exploratory ships violated orbital protocols and accidentally disrupted one of our research stations, we said nothing. They believed that silence was submission. It wasn't. It was the first step in a doctrine they hadn't encountered: patience with purpose. Because while they were laughing, we were preparing. We learned that the council wasn't truly unified. Behind the grand chambers and press statements, they squabbled over resources, envied each other's colonies, and weaponized bureaucracy against themselves. Their technology was advanced, yes, but it was inherited, not understood. Most races hadn't built their empires. They'd scavenged them, preserved tech they couldn't replicate, guarded secrets they couldn't explain. When systems failed, they waited for someone else to fix it. Progress had stalled, comfort calcified them. We didn't announce our arrival with fanfare. No armadas, no declarations. We fed them false data. We let them think we were obsessed with joining them, admiring them. Meanwhile, we stripped apart the very treaties they'd forced upon us, word by word, mapping their loopholes, understanding their legal code better than they did. Every insult they thought harmless, every mock broadcast, they became pieces of a growing psychological map. It was never about revenge. Not then. It was about clarity. We knew how they saw us. We just needed to make sure we knew how they operated, every protocol, every instinct, every chain of command. By the time they noticed anything was off, we already had ghost protocols inserted into their communications network. Not control, observation. They didn't know we were inside. Listening. Watching. They called us weak. They joked about our wars, saying they were tribal skirmishes compared to galactic campaigns. But they didn't understand what those wars forged in us. How we learned to innovate under pressure, how we weaponized desperation, how we evolved not by inheritance, but by necessity. We didn't need 1,000 years of peace to make progress, we needed a challenge. And they gave us one. So we smiled. Let them laugh. Let them dismiss. Let them gather in their golden halls and joke about Earth. Because deep beneath that laughter, buried in their most secure data vaults, was the first quiet signal. A ping from Earth. Not a message. Not a threat. Just a handshake, alien in format, impossible to trace, with a code embedded in frequencies they didn't recognize. It was the first quiet tap on their unbreakable doors. And none of them noticed. The assumption that our quiet meant ignorance was their first error. They believed our diplomacy was submission, that our restraint was the result of weakness. But Earth never operated like them. We didn't advertise intent. We concealed it. We didn't need to impress with pageantry. We advanced in silence, because our strength was never built on spectacle. It was forged in pressure, scarcity, and survival. They analyzed our military forces and saw limitations: no interstellar fleets, limited off-world infrastructure, outdated propulsion systems. They didn't see the modularity, the adaptive designs, the redundancy built into everything we made. Our ships weren't pretty, but they were reliable, brutal, and impossible to predict. They judged us by aesthetics, not results. Their doctrines were linear, ritualized. Ours were chaotic by design. Every plan made to evolve under fire, every soldier trained to improvise, every system built with fail-safes they didn't understand. They reviewed our history and misread our intent. They saw billions dead in our conflicts and assumed a fractured species unfit for unity. What they failed to grasp was what those wars taught us: how to innovate under pressure, how to unite against impossible odds, how to endure. Our pain wasn't a weakness, it was preparation. We didn't fear collapse. We had lived through it, rebuilt, and grown stronger every time. They had never been broken. They had no idea what survival demanded. We didn't expand recklessly. We consolidated, observed, and optimized. Every colony was a testbed. Every satellite carried dual purpose. Our civilian tech wasn't just for utility. It was layered with dormant protocols, ready to activate on command. Civilian stations became defense hubs in hours. Mining platforms rerouted into kinetic platforms. Their analysts saw infrastructure. What they missed was flexibility. They were building for comfort. We were preparing for contingency. Our psychological warfare was already active. We fed them contradictory patterns, portraying ourselves as disorganized, inefficient, overly emotional. They believed it. They published research papers on our unreliable logic, fragile hierarchy structures, and over-reliance on instinct. They never considered we were letting them draw those conclusions. Our behavioral misdirection ran so deep that their military simulations consistently ranked humans as the least threatening emergent race. Exactly where we needed to be. While they held debates in their ornate halls, we ran silent drills in asteroid fields. While they reviewed committee memos, we rewrote battlefield doctrine every 6 months. Their fleets required chain-of-command confirmations for engagement. Ours trained units to operate fully autonomous in case of communication blackouts. Their officers had careers. Ours had missions. Their soldiers followed doctrine. Ours rewrote it mid-battle. They mocked our biology. No natural armor. Weak musculature. Fragile organs. But they didn't account for human pain tolerance, our capacity to function under trauma, our ability to survive exposure, starvation, and mental collapse. Their species had evolved in stable environments. Ours had clawed up from extinction events, ice ages, resource scarcity, and our own brutality. We were never the strongest, but we were always the last ones standing. Our weaponry lacked elegance, but it didn't need it. Rail-driven projectiles, magnetic accelerators, high-density impact rounds, mechanical death at terrifying velocity. They focused on energy shielding and beam weapons. We focused on breaching, disruption, and momentum. They considered war a chessboard. We treated it like wildfire. Their simulations couldn't account for the sheer speed with which humans shifted strategies once engaged. No committee. No consensus. Just execution. Human intelligence networks had infiltrated their outer communication nodes months before the first shot was ever fired. Not sabotage monitoring. Patterns, transit schedules, command hierarchies. Our analysts mapped their fleet behavior in real time without ever revealing presence. Their overconfidence made them predictable. Predictability made them vulnerable. They still believed we were waiting to catch up. They didn't realize we'd already surpassed them in what mattered: resilience, speed, intent. We weren't mimicking their model of empire. We were building a new doctrine, one that made their entire playbook obsolete. They called it primitive. It was precise. They thought they understood us. They had no idea what we were capable of. So when the first engagement came, it wasn't a surprise to us. It was data confirmed. A predictable escalation they thought would intimidate. But we were already inside their systems, already locked onto their command signals, already tracking the location of every ship before they exited FTL. They launched an exercise. We began the war. They chose a human frontier colony. A small one, less than 20,000 inhabitants, mostly agricultural, lightly defended. The aliens called it a tactical simulation, claiming it was part of their annual exercises. No declaration. No formal warning. Just ships descending from orbit, jamming communications, and deploying drones under the pretense of mock engagement. The drills turned lethal within minutes. Civilian infrastructure was torn apart. Hospitals vaporized. Survivors were captured and paraded in front of galactic media as specimens of interest. Laughter echoed across their networks. Their commentators labeled it a necessary lesson. But they didn't understand what they had just set in motion. The colony's last emergency burst reached us seconds before the relay was incinerated. No grand speech. No desperate plea. Just 4 seconds of raw video. A child hiding beneath twisted steel, eyes locked with the camera as plasma fire lit the sky behind him. That image was enough. There was no debate. No vote. Humanity responded, not with threats, but with complete withdrawal. All diplomatic channels were cut. All civilian networks went dark. Every human presence across alien systems vanished overnight. Merchant vessels disappeared from trade routes. Stations stopped transmitting. Earth fell silent. The galaxy mistook that silence for fear. It wasn't. Exactly 24 hours later, 5 alien listening posts ceased to exist. Not attacked, removed. Their coordinates now pointed to gravitational voids where nothing remained. No debris. No survivors. Just absence. Attempts to investigate failed. Probes went dark. Scout ships never returned. The Council held emergency meetings, demanding answers. None came. Their intelligence networks found no trace of human movement. No fleet deployments. No unusual launches. But systems kept vanishing. Communications nodes. Defense satellites. Patrol groups. One by one. Gone. Not crippled, erased. They finally understood something was wrong when their own ships turned on them. Frigates lost navigational control, rerouted mid-jump, and crashed into planetary bodies. Entire destroyers initiated self-destruct without warning. It wasn't sabotage. It was internal compromise. Code injected months prior. Embedded in firmware. Waiting. Their AI firewalls didn't even recognize the intrusion. They had never considered humanity capable of digital warfare on this scale. They thought we were physical creatures, bound to hardware and crude machines. But we had learned to fight in silence, through systems, in frequencies they hadn't even charted. Then came the first visible strike. Not because we wanted to be seen, because it was necessary. A central command station, orbiting a key trade hub, evaporated mid-transmission. 1 second it was online, broadcasting orders. The next, only static. Footage from nearby craft showed a ripple, then light, then nothing. No projectile. No beam. Just disintegration. Alien scientists scrambled for theories: gravitic compression, quantum rupture, exotic weapons. None fit. Because none of their minds had prepared for the concept of a human-developed stealth kinetic delivery platform capable of bypassing detection entirely. Their military doctrine collapsed overnight. Standard formations broke down. Communication became unreliable. Fleets scattered. Panic set in. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy faced an enemy it didn't understand, one that didn't follow rules, didn't posture, didn't negotiate. Human forces didn't broadcast identity. They didn't demand surrender. They didn't even acknowledge transmissions. They just struck, precisely, relentlessly, and without error. Colonial governors across alien territories begged the Council for support. None came. They were too busy trying to understand how deep the infiltration went. Earth hadn't just prepared for war. It had embedded itself into the galaxy's bloodstream, and now it was triggering collapse from the inside out. Backup systems failed. Resource lines dried up. Propaganda stations began broadcasting human counter-narratives, unedited footage of the colony attack, civilian deaths, council transcripts mocking human capability. None of it hacked. All of it legally extracted and stored. They had handed us the ammunition long ago. Now we were returning it, repackaged for maximum collapse. The aliens finally sent envoys, desperate to de-escalate. None of them reached their destinations. Not because we stopped them, but because their own systems rerouted them endlessly through dead sectors. They circled in isolation, watching their own empires crumble piece by piece. One of them broadcast a public appeal. "What do the humans want?" We never responded. We had already made our answer clear. The Galactic Council convened in panic. Their chambers, once filled with laughter and arrogance, echoed now with silence and dread. Half the delegates didn't attend. Entire systems had gone dark. Fleet commanders stopped responding. Relay stations failed in sequence, not from attack, but from systemic collapse. The infrastructure they relied on, the networks they mocked us for not having, was now their greatest vulnerability. Every redundant system they trusted had been charted, studied, and bypassed without a single warning flare. Emergency measures were declared, but enforcement failed. Orders couldn't transmit fast enough. By the time decisions were finalized, the conditions on the ground had already changed. Entire colonies rebelled. Outer sectors refused to acknowledge central authority. Human distributed data streams, long dismissed as meaningless noise, had ignited a fire in places the Council believed permanently subdued. Slaves broke their chains. Governors lost command. Protests became mutinies. Not from human interference, but from the truths we revealed, uncensored recordings of Council corruption, forced relocations, and centuries of manipulated history. Human operatives had not just attacked the military, they dismantled trust. News feeds showed Council members secretly colluding with black market warlords. Transcripts exposed falsified economic data used to suppress less powerful species. Footage circulated of alien dignitaries laughing as human colonies burned. These weren't fabrications. These were files hidden within the very systems we had once been denied access to. Systems now fully exposed. Council forces attempted internal policing. Loyalist fleets were redirected to quell uprisings. But their ships were compromised. AI subroutines failed. Autopilot systems refused to engage. Command signals were jammed by invisible sources. Ships collided, grounded, or shut down mid-flight. No human vessel in sight. Just absence. Fear spread through command ranks. Paranoia overtook coordination. Officers turned on each other, suspecting sabotage. Loyalty fractured. Leadership evaporated. On the ground, former allies of Earth found themselves protected. Civilian zones that had once traded fairly with humans reported no losses. Their systems remained untouched. Their stations remained active. Their comms unblocked. It wasn't favoritism, it was acknowledgement. Humanity remembered those who didn't mock, those who treated us as equals. We hadn't come to dominate. We came to remove the rot. What remained deserved peace. The core systems of the Council were infiltrated last. Not because they were well defended, but because they needed to be seen falling. Their collapse had to be visible. One by one, encrypted files surfaced across the galaxy. Video of leaders betting on war casualties. Minutes from secret meetings planning planetary displacement. Internal votes to suppress entire species for resource gain. The myth of a just and noble galactic order crumbled in real time. Then came the final signal, a forced broadcast. The Council's top-tier leaders, locked in a sealed chamber, powerless as their own infrastructure was commandeered. A voice, synthetic, calm, unmistakably human, overrode their network. "This is not retribution. This is correction." The feed didn't show executions. No threats were made. Just exposure. Every secret, every lie, every abuse played without interruption. Billions watched. Billions turned away from the old order. Fleet-wide shutdown protocols triggered next. Engines ceased. Shields dropped. Power cores failed in sequence. Thousands of ships went dark. Human presence wasn't required. We'd already mapped every vulnerability, every access point, every blind spot. Our war wasn't conquest. It was precision deletion of corruption. No cities bombed. No planets razed. Just surgical removal of what no longer deserved to rule. By the time the Council attempted negotiation, they were irrelevant. Their voice no longer mattered. Their commands reached no one. The galaxy wasn't listening. They had led with arrogance, ruled with fear, and expected loyalty. What they received was silence. Human fleets never formed a blockade. There were no banners. No marching troops. Just a presence, subtle, unstoppable, undeniable. Drones monitored hyperspace lanes. Probes hovered in planetary shadows. We didn't occupy, we observed. And when necessary, we intervened with clinical speed. Humanity had no interest in governing the galaxy. We didn't need thrones. We didn't need praise. We wanted clarity, justice, and deterrence. The Council laughed at Earth. Now, they no longer existed to laugh at anything. Galactic space settled into an uneasy quiet. No more Council broadcasts. No fleet maneuvers. No declarations. Only silence, monitored by the very species once dismissed as irrelevant. Humanity didn't assume control in the way the galaxy expected. No capital was claimed. No governing body established. There were no parades, no announcements, no empire. Earth simply returned to silence, but this time, the entire galaxy listened. Every hyperlane now passed through zones under invisible observation. Ships moved, but differently, slower, cautious, uncertain. Trade continued, but the arrogance was gone. Where once species traveled freely with assumed dominance, they now requested clearance, checked systems twice, avoided transmitting anything resembling mockery or threat. They feared retaliation not because of past destruction, but because of what had been implied: precision, memory, and reach. Earth had no interest in conquest. It had made that obvious. But if provoked again, no second warning would follow. Former Council worlds were left intact. Their infrastructure untouched. But their control was gone. Regional alliances formed without central leadership. Independent systems reopened diplomatic channels, with each other, and more carefully, with humanity. In every corner of the galaxy, there was one rule now clearly understood: provoke nothing. Assume nothing. Respect everything. Because the humans weren't watching to rule, they were watching to prevent. They didn't trust galactic peace. They enforced it through presence alone. The few alien species who had supported humanity during its rise were rewarded with technological exchanges, quiet shipments, untraceable sources, delivered without fanfare. Their worlds experienced sudden spikes in infrastructure development, stabilized networks, and encrypted communication protocols immune to sabotage. These weren't gifts. They were acknowledgments. Markers that humanity saw them, and remembered. They, too, were now protected, whether they realized it or not. Human-built relay stations began to appear in deep orbit, autonomous, silent, equipped with unmatched sensors. No weapons visible, no crew on board. Just data. They observed, catalogued, studied shifts in fleet formations, political developments, supply shortages, and regional tensions. Their presence wasn't hidden, but neither was it announced. They simply existed, always a step ahead, always outside interference. And when rogue factions attempted to tamper with them, their ships vanished. Not destroyed. Not boarded. Just gone, without trace, without echo. The message was clear. Alien historians began rewriting their records. Entire volumes purged the mocking narratives once popular about Earth. Now, humans were described as a species of deep patience, limitless adaptability, and surgical judgment. No longer were they called fragile or disorganized. Now they were spoken of in hushed tones, strategists who dismantled an empire without claiming one, warriors who fought without glory, sentinels who ruled nothing but ensured balance. Inside secure alien archives, one discovery changed everything. During a routine cleanup of an abandoned council vault, a technician uncovered a human data core left behind. Inside were files, timestamps, logs, and names. Every incident, every insult, every dismissal and denial humanity had endured since first contact. The entries were exact, emotionless, recorded down to the second. Entire planetary governments had been catalogued, analyzed, and filed under simple tags: threat, irrelevant, observed, cooperative. The galaxy realized too late that while it had watched Earth with derision, Earth had watched it with forensic detail. Still, Earth made no claim. No throne. No symbol. The skies above human colonies remained quiet, no fleets in orbit, no flags in motion. Only stars, and the occasional pulse from deep space installations, signals so encrypted, no one dared attempt decryption. Humanity had achieved something no other species had managed: control without conquest. Not through weapons, but through certainty. No one questioned who now held the real power, not because they were told, but because they saw what happened when that power was underestimated. From that day forward, the question was never if humans would return. It was whether they ever truly left.